Chapter 6. Entirely ready. On wanting to want. Step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 6 is the shortest step in the program to state and, by the quiet consensus of the people who have actually walked all 12, among the longest to live. Notice what it does not ask of you. No pages. No appointments. No amends. No phone calls. No kneeling. Not one visible action of any kind. After the labor of the inventory and the earthquake of the telling, Step 6 looks like a landing between staircases, a place to catch your breath. It is not. It is the hinge on which the entire second half of the program turns, and more recoveries stall here, silently, than at any step with a reputation for difficulty. Because Step 6 asks for the one thing you cannot fake, perform, or write your way into. It asks you to want. And Chapter 5 left you standing in front of the reason that's hard. The fifth step put the machinery on the table in the light, the patterns named, the gods identified, the exact nature exact at last. And this book asked you, at that chapter's close, the question polite spirituality never asks out loud. Now that you can see them, the resentment, the control, the charm, the fear that has voted in every election of your adult life, do you actually want them gone? Do not answer quickly. The step gives you no deadline, and the honest answer, for almost everyone, on the first asking, is no. Or at best the murkier, truer thing underneath no, which this chapter exists to honor. I want them gone, and I am not there yet. Begin by honoring the resistance, because it is not perversity. It is history. Your defects of character did not arrive as vandals. Nearly every one of them was hired, brought on staff, long ago, by a younger you facing conditions the current you has half forgotten, to do a job that at the time genuinely needed doing. The rage that now torches your relationships was once the only fence a child could build around himself. The control that now exhausts everyone you love was once the only way to keep a chaotic household from killing anybody. The charm that now keeps every relationship at exactly arm's length was once how a small person survived a large person's moods. The vigilance, the numbing, the perfectionism, the flight into performance, the flight into invisibility. Walk down the roster of your fourth step patterns and ask each one, honestly, when were you hired, and what was the job? And you will find, behind nearly every defect, a frightened and resourceful child doing the best hiring that could be done with the applicants available. This is why you cannot simply hate your defects out the door, and why the spiritualities of self-contempt, which some of us were raised on and which shame will happily administer, have never once produced a free human being. The defects are not invaders. They are veterans. They have been protecting something for decades. And the strange, tender work of Step 6 is less like evicting criminals than like standing down an old guard, walking out to the wall where the sentries still pace. Decades after the war ended, decades after the border moved, and saying to each one, "You kept me alive, I know what you were for. And you are relieved of duty, because the thing you were protecting is safe now." Safe, per Chapter 2, in arms that were holding it all along. But between the knowing and the standing down falls a shadow, and the greatest psychologist in the history of the church stood in that shadow for years and left us its exact description. Augustine of Hippo. A man who knew addiction from inside, whose attachment had its hooks in him precisely at the level of desire. Records in his confessions the prayer he actually prayed in the years when he knew what freedom would ask of him and could not yet bring himself to be free. Give me chastity, but not yet. It may be the most honest prayer in Christian literature, and every person in the rooms has prayed some translation of it. Let me be done with the resentment, after this one last rehearsal of it. Remove my need to control, starting next quarter. Take the charm, but leave it installed through the holidays. And Augustine, watching himself pray this way, made the discovery that step 6 is built on. The will is not a lever. We imagine willing as a single clean act. Decide, and it is decided. And then we despise ourselves when the deciding doesn't hold, as if we had failed at pulling a lever a child could pull. But the will, Augustine found, is more like a parliament. Many members, elected in different eras of your life, holding different portfolios, and the motion "let the defects be removed" does not pass by acclamation. Part of you votes yes with tears. Part of you abstains. And a disciplined bloc in the back, the Veterans Party, funded by decades of survival, votes no, and filibusters, and moves to table the motion till spring. When you discover that you cannot make yourself entirely ready by trying hard, you have not discovered your brokenness. You have discovered your anatomy. The divided will is not the disease of a few weak people, it is the standard equipment of the fallen human being. And step 6 is the program's genius provision for it. A step that asks not for the completed vote but for the honest tally, and teaches you what to do with a parliament you do not control, which is the subject of the last section of this chapter. But first, a precision in the step's wording that carries half this book's theology in 4 words, and which you are now, 5 chapters in, equipped to hear. The step says defects of character. Not defects of soul. Not defects of self. Not defects of you. And on the account of the human person this book unfolded in chapters 2 and 5, that wording is not casual, it is surgically exact. Your character, in the deep grammar, is the enacted you, the diachronic self, the one assembled across time by choices and habits and history. The showing. This book has called it, the outward telling of the inward word. Character is real, and it is genuinely yours, and it is precisely the register in which the wreckage happened, and it is not the given identity. The you within, the word spoken in the Son, the image given whole, the theophany the wreckage never reached, has no defects. It never did. It cannot. Nothing in your history had the reach. What has defects is the manifestation. The mask grown over the lamp, the counterfeit showings, the parasite's organs. Chapter 2 gave you this mechanism. Rage and control and charm as armor are not features of your face. They are features of the plaster. And therefore hear what step 6 is actually proposing, because half the terror of this step comes from mishearing it. You are not being asked to consent to the demolition of yourself. The surgery is on the mask. The face was never in danger. When God removes a defect of character, nothing of you goes with it. Nothing was ever less than whole in the original, and nothing is being upgraded in the original either. The gift was complete as given, and what increases, ever, as only the showing of it. The removal is an unveiling. The sentries stand down and the country they were blockading turns out to be intact. Better than intact. Untouched, the one province the whole long war never entered. People fear step 6 as a kind of death, and the fear deserves respect, because the mask has worn your name for years and its removal will feel, some days, like losing a face. But the program's whole wager, and this book's, is the opposite of death. That under the face you constructed is the face you were given, and that everyone who has ever completed this surgery reports the same astonishment. I thought I was being erased, and I was being introduced. And one protection, carried forward from the inventory and planted again here, where the stakes are higher. Entirely ready does not mean ready to stop being a creature. Read the roster of what you're tempted to submit for removal and strike from the list, firmly, everything that is merely human. Your need for rest, which is not sloth. Your need for affection, which is not neediness. Your grief, which is not self-pity. Your limits, which are not laziness, your unfinishedness, which is not failure but the shape of a being made for epectasis, for the endless stretching forward into an inexhaustible God, which requires, permanently, gloriously, that there be more ahead. God will not remove your finitude, because your finitude is not a defect, it is the vessel of the adventure. The defects are the counterfeits, the worship patterns, the false showings, the sentries at the wall. The program asks God to take the plaster. Only shame asks God to take the face. Now a distinction from the old tradition that explains something otherwise bewildering about where you find yourself, namely, why there is anything left to remove at all. You turned, after all. Chapter 3 was real. The decision was made, the will and the life went over the table, the arms closed. If the surrender was genuine, why are the defects still here, still armed, still voting? Did the third step not take? It took. But the tradition has always known that turning and cleansing are two operations, not one, and confusing them has wrecked more earnest people than open rebellion ever did. The turning, metanoia, repentance, the about face of the whole person, is an event of orientation. It can happen in a moment, on a kitchen floor, in a folding chair, and when it happens, the person is genuinely, wholly, turned, facing home, held, headed in. The cleansing, catharsis, purgation, the actual dismantling of the deformations that the years installed, is not an event but a process. Long, layered, deeper than the will's reach, proceeding at the pace of grace and consent. A man rescued from the sea is entirely rescued in one moment, and the sea he swallowed comes up over hours, and the cold leaves his bones over days, and he learns to sleep without dreaming of water over years. Nobody standing on the deck says the rescue didn't take. Step 3 was the rescue. Steps 6 and 7. And honestly, in their slow ripening, all the steps and all the years, are the sea coming up. Philip Saint Roman, whose fingerprints have been on this book since its prologue, built his whole account of the recovering life on this insight. Recovery is progressive purification. Not a verdict survived and filed, but a lifelong, grace-paced freeing of the person, layer by layer, each stratum of defect surrendering only when its hour comes and its protection is no longer needed. And notice the mercy hidden in the doctrine. If purgation is a process, then the persistence of your defects tonight is not evidence against your turning. You are not still defective because the surrender failed. You are a turned person being progressively cleansed, which is the only kind of cleansed person there has ever been. Which brings us to the question hiding in the step's strangest feature, the passive construction that offends every self-improving instinct in the modern soul. To have God remove, not resolved to eliminate our defects, not committed to a program of character development. The step quietly assumes that you cannot remove them yourself, and it is right, and the reasons are worth owning, because they will save you years of doomed campaigns. Gerald May spent a clinical career documenting the first reason. The will cannot operate on itself, because in addiction the will is precisely the patient. The attachment is not a behavior the will can veto, it is a formation in the willing, the nailing of desire itself, and a nailed hand cannot unnail itself by gripping harder. Every white-knuckled campaign against a defect ends the same way, and you have run the experiment. The campaign is staffed by the Parliament, the Parliament contains the Veterans Party, and the project of self-purification becomes, with eerie reliability, one more theater for the defects themselves. Pride running the humility initiative, control managing the surrender program, the perfectionism placed in charge of accepting imperfection. The self cannot lift itself by its own collar, the fog cannot clear the fog. And Thomas Keating gave the second reason its clinical name. The defects are not stored where the will can reach them. Their roots run below decision, below awareness, into the emotional programs installed in the first years of life, which is why Keating called the contemplative life the divine therapy. In the silence, at depths no resolution ever visited, the spirit conducts the slow unloading and dismantling that decades of trying could not begin. The removal happens in you, with your consent, at your pace, and not by you. There is a physician, and step 6 is the consent form. So what, then, is your part? Only the whole thing the step names, the readiness. Grace does not break down doors. The God who refuses to make machines of us, chapter 3, waits on consent even to heal. Perhaps especially to heal, since the healing goes to the roots of the person. Your work is to open the hand. And here the program's realism about the Parliament returns with its gentlest provision, the one that makes this step possible for actual human beings. If you cannot be willing to be willing. If the motion won't pass tonight, table it and pray for the members. The gap between wanting and wanting to want is not a disqualification. It is a prayer-sized gap. The oldest prayer in the Gospel fits it exactly. Lord, I believe. Help my unbelief. Lord, I'm willing. Help my unwillingness. Lord, I want. Teach me to want. Prayed honestly, over weeks, that prayer does what campaigns never did. The Parliament turns over slowly, member by member, as each old sentry is thanked and persuaded that the war is over. And readiness grows by taste. Let God remove one small defect, one you can spare, one whose vote you can win, and the astonishment of the result lighter, freer, more yourself, not less becomes the campaign speech that flips the harder districts. Entirely ready is not a threshold you crash through. It is a tide that comes in. When it has come in, when the hands are open, the sentries stood down, the consent as whole as you can currently make it, you will find that what remains to be done is almost embarrassingly small. One sentence, spoken to the physician who has been scrubbed in and waiting since before you were born. The program calls it Step 7. It contains the word this whole tradition turns on. Humbly, and it is where this book goes next.